Ladies and gentlemen, first Q&A ever. And probably first Q&A I've done in a very long time. I used to do a little bit more on the YouTubes. We do some here and there on Instagram Live. And obviously you guys know this is 50% facts. And we always try to get you guys some information at the end. A little bit of entertainment in the beginning. We try to answer a question, then we bring in an expert so you get a little takeaway. It's kind of like there's something real wonderful about the 90s and early 2000s sitcoms. Home Improvement, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, and maybe obviously I'm biased because that's the era I grew up in. And they probably started earlier. I'd imagine was I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver and things of this nature would also do this. I just don't find those funny. But Fresh Prince has the recipe for entertainment and a moral lesson every single episode. And I'm not comparing myself to Will Smith, but, what we're trying to do is entertain you a little bit and give you a little bit of take home. So we're going to do this Q&A. Follow us both on Instagram, Twitter, DJMcD, Salamico2Ks.
Yep.
We might do these more often.
Yep.
Tweet at us, comment at us if you like these.
Realize that if we come up against a question that we don't have a great answer to, that's probably going to go on our list of questions to find an expert for.
Exactly. Like this one, opinion on cannabis.
Yeah.
We can talk about our opinions on cannabis all day long, politically, personally, but it's obviously high on our list of questions that we want to attack, CBD being so freaking trending right now. It's everywhere.
And we have had more than one sponsor reach
sponsors,
out on that, and we haven't gone there yet, obviously.
Yeah, and we've asked a lot of our sciencey friends that are literally in the labs, and they say there's not much actually being studied on it. There's no real conclusions happening, so that's kind of why we haven't tackled that, because with no conclusions, that means that there's no expert, so we can't really answer your question. But one day, we're going to really tackle cannabis, CBD, but as of right now, we don't know. I guess we could start with personal opinions. My personal opinion is pretty down the middle of the road. I think that alcohol... and I don't like the argument that everyone's driving drunk and killing people and dying from alcohol poisoning. No one smoked too much and died. I don't know if that's the answer. I guess I've heard,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's a matter of degree, I guess.
Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are stoned that are crashing cars as well. We just don't know, and that's my only issue. Is that as far as I know, and that was a big issue here in California, is they don't have a way to test. Currently
still working on that.
or how intoxicated you are at the very moment, and obviously that makes driving and being in public a little bit different. I'm just for people being safe. Am I for personal use? Sure. If that's what you like to do in your downtime in your home, go for it. I don't know if I like the idea of even bars out, because I know they're talking about that in Nevada, kind of similar to an Amsterdam deal.
We're talking about here too, I think.
Yeah, where you can indulge in the location you purchase. I don't know if I like that or not, just because even bars, I don't love the idea of bars.
I love the idea of bars.
Yeah, I don't like
the
reality
of bars.
Yeah, I'm
that
the
I
same.
have issues with.
Yeah, I don't like humans. That's where my real issue is.
If I could just own a little bar, a little out of the way bar,
or
if
people
could hang
could
out
just
in and
be
not have to
responsible.
worry. Yeah, exactly.
That's what I don't like, is there's always 70% of people going out, having a beer, meeting an old friend, or chatting, and then there's always 30% going out to get hammered drunk and starting fights, being loud, being annoying, breaking things, or, sadly, getting into situations where you hurt other people in a vehicle or something of that nature. I hate all that, and I just think that any substance can lead to that. So,
yeah, I think anything that becomes a crutch is an issue.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people who don't seem to be able to function without being having the edge taken off with something.
Right.
And that's self-medication. That's you might want to explore what's getting you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother rant of
but I mean,
optimizing and this and that and supplements, this
mental
and that.
health. And
Why don't you just start look inward to fix your inward problems rather than looking outward to fix your inward problems?
Yeah. I always say, and I know I've said it before on the show, but I'm going to repeat myself. Don't indulge so much in a thing that you like that you can't do it anymore because you've burned it out.
Yeah.
You've become irresponsible about it or whatever. And for some people, that's not ever drinking. Right. Really, because they don't have that kind of restraint. They have some other kind of pathology going on that drives them to drink too much. Same thing with anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sucks. Obviously self-awareness is kind of the answer there, but then like how do you teach that? How do you manifest that? How do people get there? Because there's sadly that 30% or more of people I'm talking about aren't self-aware, and that's the number one issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to teach that. I think I'm just lucky enough that because of my anxiety and overthinking, I overanalyze myself, and I became I'm constantly working on self-awareness and what drives me, what makes me sad, what makes me a good human, what makes me a bad human, because I just am over-analytical on myself. But for those of you that are not, maybe check out some fucking therapy, meditation, exercise, something of that nature to try to fix some of your inside issues.
I was, this feeds into a question that I'm going to get to later, but I was having my neck worked on yesterday at a physical therapist office, and she's like, I don't know, we haven't talked about stress, and we haven't talked about to what extent stress plays a role, but that's a part of your body that reacts to stress.
For sure.
And she's like, here, I was lying down because she's been working on my neck. She's like, here, let's try this, but put one hand on your stomach, put one on your chest, and I just want you to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and breathe into your belly and not into your chest. And she's like, I did it a couple times. She's like, oh, no, you got that right away. And I said, yeah, it's because when you lift, you're supposed to breathe into your abdomen because that's where your brace is, not breathe into your chest. I've seen so many people breathe into their chest or basically like their mouths, and that's how they blow out their eyes and their skin and everything else because all the pressure's in the wrong place.
Yeah, and even meditation. If you meditate a lot, that's all it is breathing. So
so if you're a lifter and you can do the brace thing, that you can probably do some breathing to help relax yourself. There's plenty of information out there about it. You don't have to look to us to answer that question, but. Speaking of lifting, here's a question that was in from the show's Instagram. Fiddlination is the person who asked this question. What current and or possible future technologies can powerlifting competitions use to remove subjectivity in judging squat depth? And I frankly do not have an answer to that question.
There, sadly, one, do we want to?
Yeah.
Two, you can make that argument for any sport.
Yeah.
Basketball, football, replays. People are trying to do different things. I think the number one would probably be video replay, and the issue would only be time. Because you'd maybe need a separate set of judges to go over it, and maybe you do it with a 2-to-1 call or something of that nature. I'm just freeballing this off. I've never really even thought about this. The other one people have thrown around is some kind of laser setup, which kind of makes sense with depth or something of that nature. And so say you, or even, with depth, we'll start with depth. So when you get your rack height at check-in, you also get a depth height by this laser. And I'm no freaking engineer, but I'm sure there's some laser that could do this pretty simply. And so they check where your hip crease is on that depth, and you have to hit that or below. And the laser basically tells you from the side whether you're good, and then maybe you have a judge, one or two, to see kind of an up-down motion or something. And then the other one I thought about with bench, with the pause, is fencing. Fencing, they have tipped suits and swords. So when you hit it, it like hits a buzzer. So you do something like that with the pause, and maybe you set a timer. So maybe there's, everyone has the exact 0.6 second pause. And so when you hit your chest, the bar touches that thing, a buzzer goes off, and now you can press. But again, I think that depending on the federation, depending on the individual, I don't necessarily think machines are the way to go.
It's a training issue. I think at the end of the day, it's training people to be able to look at different body types and look at that point, that hip crease relative to the knee, and develop consistency around judging it. And it probably means like watching a lot of side view video to get a sense of what passes and what doesn't pass, and being able to shoot those things from that same angle. I know that there are federations that do like preceptorship for judging. You can't become an international ref until you've passed a test and all that stuff. The thing is that all of those people have individual biases too. We're not at a point, I don't think, somebody can enlighten me on this, where we really have what they call inter-rater reliability, where everybody is seeing the same thing roughly the same way. And baseball of the professional sports is probably the one that's the worst for this relative to pitch location, balls and strikes. They have machinery that can call balls and strikes much more accurate than humans, but there's been a question about that because baseball is an old game.
Yeah.
And everybody is very bound in the tradition of that. And I think that powerlifting may be the same way. And then the only way to overcome that is with training, except when you look at baseball, there are wide variations of strike zones from home plate umpire to home plate umpire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's two things. I think one, training standards and stuff, but I think also like kind of anyone can become a judge in powerlifting. Where like at a professional level or even a high school level, competitive high school level, for most sports, pay is a little bit better.
Yep.
And so then the qualifications to get there might be a little bit more difficult. So then maybe the expertise is a little bit better. Obviously, at the professional level, NBA, NFL, et cetera, is probably pretty good. I've heard a lot of those guys are like lawyers, judges, et cetera. And so then, and they're getting paid well. So to get there, it's a little bit more of a task. So maybe we raise that. You raise the pay a little bit, and then you might raise the how optimal these guys are.
But then we have to get into federation consolidation so that there's actually, enough people involved to make it worthwhile. There's going to have to be more money in the sport.
Yeah, I think it depends on the federation because I think there's some money rolling around places that we don't know where it's going.
Well, that's possible too. And this is not a comment that's connected to that, but I don't know if you saw the new Raw bench record from Bosses.
And it passed? Is that the big issue? Yeah, it passed. And he didn't rack it, or the judges didn't rack it. Right?
The big issue was that a side spotter celebrated at the end of the press. When you can't hear the rack command in any video that I've.
And he's like kind of holding it, and then he kind of drops it.
Yeah. The other side the other side came down, started to his elbow or wrist or whatever started to buckle. Number one, I hate all-time world records that are not clean.
Yeah, it is. I would hate it as a lifter, to be honest.
But most of the time, they're not clean.
Yeah, it is hard.
And especially if they're not in a USAPL, IPF
those tend to look a little prettier.
Yeah, the standards tend to be really tight. Several people said, well, they don't pay spotters. Well,
sometimes they do.
Yeah, well, why the fuck don't they pay spotters?
Yeah, sometimes they do.
If anybody's making money on it, then somebody needs to be paying spotters.
And that's been a topic for a long time. There's an IPF Worlds where spotters were highly ridiculed and other meets were highly ridiculed and people got hurt. And it is a dangerous sport. Going back, my last thing on the judges is that powerlifting rule book is and the sport and what you're judging is so freaking simple compared to football, baseball. I'd probably say football and basketball are probably the hardest just because there's so much going on.
Right.
Football, there's a lot of guys going on. Basketball, there's a lot going on. It doesn't stop. Like that's really hard refereeing. And so if we are complaining about powerlifting, like. I mean, how many bad calls are made in a basketball game? Thousands, and so
quite
you just get
a
over
few.
it. Yeah, so if there's a couple, you have 3 judges at a powerlifting meet, chances are that all 3 F up is a little bit lower. So I think it's probably not the least. It's not a priority in how we raise the sport of powerlifting right now, in my eyes. Olympic weightlifting, they only got they got the same kind of judges, and that's in the Olympics doing just fine. And I'm sure people kind of complain about it, but it's kind of simple. Whether you press out or you don't, whether equipment breaks or doesn't, it's fairly simple.
I think that Olympic lifting judging is a lot simpler.
Yeah, I mean it happens fast. Yeah, I mean
it's fast, but I think it's simpler.
I think it's all damn simple. Like I think we have bigger issues to fry.
Yeah,
like our media, the money. Consolidation of feds. I think those are bigger issues if we want the sport to grow or make the Olympics or who knows what then.
Just from behind the scenes, I can tell you that the multiply feds are experiencing some consolidation around the whole WPO effort.
Yeah, trying to make something happen again.
Yeah, because of where you have to compete in order to qualify. That's really what it comes down to. Some brilliant work on Michael Fahey's part there. Okay, going to my Instagram. This is Jacob W. Ross, our good friend. Can you just talk about how we might be related, please, and thank you. Jacob and I may be related, but way back.
23 and me type stuff.
Yeah, potentially. You
guys are both pretty American.
Yeah. Well, but the deal is that we're very like English, Scottish, Welsh.
But I just mean like your folks have been here a while.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of generations. And that gets hard. I think
many generations.
Yeah, one of my other friends did it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, it goes like 5 generations, and we're in Boston. I'm like, well, that's pretty tough. Like it's just tough to track. Like, yeah, you're English, but like, where does it go from there? Because there's such a split and so much movement.
Yeah, in the 1500s, 1600s, I have Rosses in my family tree. So, and very like, I guess his brother did it, so we haven't really compared yet. But like, it's a real possibility.
This might be quick nip in the bud. This might not be. Can introverts do good at powerlifting meets?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. They absolutely can.
Yeah, I think it depends on your definition of an introvert. But like, I'd imagine, and I understand like performance anxiety and things of that nature, but I don't know if that's directly related to introvert extrovert. I think there's probably tons of extroverts who get an insane amount of performance anxiety, and I would also imagine that like there's a high level, and these are all kind of stereotypes, but I'd imagine there's like high level of creativity and creative people that are insane introverts, like a comedian, actor. Some of those people are probably very, very introverted, and you can argue. I'd like to argue that like stand-up comedy in front of a huge crowd, even a small crowd, but a huge crowd, is probably like the most performance anxiety, at least that I could imagine. Like lifting, you don't have to say nothing. There's 3 judges, no one's even watching you. But if you go to, and you have a sold-out stadium, Jerry Seinfeld or something like that, there's 20,000 people just watching you talk. Yeah, and stand there.
Well, you got the room for 15 seconds is all you got when you're lifting. So that's not
you
long.
don't even have the room. No one's looking.
Nobody's really paying attention. If you were lifting on a stage that has lights, you can't see the crowd at all. There's no. I mean, it's very personal. It's very internal. I think. Even people who have big demonstrations in their wind up for a lift.
Yeah, it could be introverts.
That's still very introverted, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's impossible to say. Like, there's no like clean cut. And maybe there is that I don't know, but there's no like psychoanalysis that you're introverted, you're extrovert. It's not like cut and dry.
It's a continuum.
Yeah.
You people who are...
and even still, like, I don't think you can just like categorize people. It's just a way you can kind of say like, I like to be alone. Another huge example I would give us, and again, this is just stereotyping, judging from the outside, is Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, he became like an internet meme with how kind of like he kind of talks like a robot. He kind of looks like, like he kind of awkward. And maybe he's just awkward. Maybe he is extroverted. Maybe he loves being around people. But it seems like he is kind of quiet and kind of introverted, yet performed his best on the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah. I tend to think that something that requires a physical performance like that really gets around social anxiety.
Yeah. Which is
because social anxiety is so much about speaking,
right?
Whereas,
and you can have both. You can be introverted and have some social anxiety. But I think there's people that are introverted that have no issues, no anxiety. I'm somewhere in between. I'm definitely introverted, and sometimes I have social anxiety, but a lot of times I'm fine socially, and I'm definitely fine performing wise. I mean, you get nerves. Every human gets nerves, but I'm not like crazy. And I think actually lifting, the individualness of it, like you said, like it's so inside the work. Like you train for potentially 5 years and then lift 9 lifts to compete. Like it's way different than like even basketball, where like basketball you're competing half of the time and you're practicing half of the time, or football you're competing 1/7 of the time and practicing 6/7 of the time or whatever. But there's more of powerlifting is done alone. Than it is the actual competing part.
And I mean, even back in the day when I was with a group, because we were lifting in gear and you need a group of people, like even quiet people found their niche. Even quiet people managed to get their lifts. I mean, I just don't see it being a limiting factor. Whoever asked us that question, if they can give us an example of why that might be a problem.
Let's switch to gears a little bit. Your least favorite food? That's a good question. I've never heard about my least favorite food. I've never talked about it.
Least favorite food. I don't like really like plasticky mass processed burger kind of stuff.
Like McDonald's or like something you throw in like a microwave.
Like something you could throw in a microwave.
What about like White Castle? I've heard like that. I've never had it.
I've had White Castle. It's nothing to write home about.
Yeah, and then because you can buy
To
White
me.
Castle like on a tray, right, and throw it in a microwave or
Yep.
an
But
oven.
I've had White Castle at White Castles though,
And it was still kinda like
not any better really.
I'm trying to think.
Other than it, with the microwave part, you can get the bun a little too done if you're not careful.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
if you go to the White Castle and it doesn't like
At least
that.
the texture's a little better. I don't really have like things that I have things that I hate, but not like foods that I hate. Like I really don't like mayonnaise. I don't like ranch dressing.
Yeah.
I don't like sour cream. But in terms of like a type, like if you take me to like Mexican, Italian, whatever, like there's always going to be something I like.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I feel like we dealt with that one already. What else do you have off of the? I'm not looking at yours yet.
I can just start to. I'm still in the DMs or the Instagram.
Okay, hold on.
Is cost of living in Sacramento? You want to talk about those things? There's,
what's the cost of living in Sacramento?
Someone says
it's on the jump up all the time.
Says, is the cost of living in Sacramento ridiculous? If so, why? Proximity.
Hello.
Cost of living in California compared to the rest of the country is quite high. I think actually Sacramento, and I'm sure you guys could find some surveys, we probably could too, but is actually quite high despite New York and San Francisco obviously being quite a bit higher. LA has places like Beverly Hills and things that kind of boost the whole area, but if you kind of take those out of there, the Brentwoods, the Palos Verdes, the Beverly Hills of LA, Los Angeles has a greater picture, and Sacramento are very similar. I know there was a survey that came out recently looking at like top big cities in the world, and Sacramento is actually quite high in cost of living, and they broke it down in many, many factors, from gas to a pound of rice to rent, mortgage, et cetera, plus what you live or make to live. So, yes, generally speaking, Sacramento is quite expensive to live in, but I'd say proximity to the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, is probably one of the reasons. And weather, safety, like everything's pretty good here.
Yeah, I think that the part of the problem is that we don't have enough apartment housing in Sacramento.
Or like varied priced housing.
That too, yeah. That too. That's why we have a little bit of a big bit of a homeless problem.
Yeah.
Fucking been on Oprah
Especially
and shit.
recently.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that we are underbuilt. I think the Bay Area is really bad for being underbuilt for housing. That's why the housing prices stay so high. As a homeowner, I would like the housing prices to stay high, but as a person who lives in the community,
Sure.
I would like there to be places that people could afford to live. There's a scale argument relative to, having cool businesses that you want to go to. You have to have enough people to go to those businesses
For sure.
to keep them open.
For sure.
And
Yeah, and both here and a lot of places in California just jetted up. Here especially just jetted up so big with downtown. Downtown Sacramento's gone through a huge evolution over the last, I guess, 5 years. And so new businesses are everywhere and new housing's everywhere, especially downtown. But the housing's quite expensive and it's only getting more expensive. So there are some issues. But, yeah, I mean, expensive is cost of living being ridiculous is all dependent, right? Because if you live here and you have, a hardworking job, you're probably going to make a little bit more than if you're working in the middle of nowhere, Texas or something of that nature. But it's definitely doable. Obviously, me and Jim have lived here for so long, we don't really know much else. And with our jobs, we are lucky that if we live somewhere else, we still kind of make the same in some senses.
yeah,
But a lot of people aren't. But if you're a nurse in Idaho and you make whatever, you probably make a little bit more living here. So it does kind of even out.
Yep. This question is for you. Did you have a hard time learning Olympic lifts coming from a powerlifting background?
Wait, say it again?
Did you have a hard time learning Olympic lifts coming from a powerlifting background?
I don't think my powerlifting background affected how hard the weightlifting was. I think I was really immobile. I'm pretty stumpy in my arms and my legs in general. So that doesn't help. I've just been immobile even as a basketball player. And then I'm a little bit older now. Like played 15 years basically of year-round basketball, then another 10 years or so of year-round powerlifting, really competitively. So my body's just been through it, and that's what made Olympic weightlifting difficult. I'm pretty coordinated. I'm pretty athletic. So some of it wasn't that hard. It's just I couldn't get my body in the positions I needed to get into, and that's what made it difficult. Some powerlifters, depending on how big you are or how extreme you take it, probably will get a little bit stiffer, which may make weightlifting a little bit more difficult. Obviously, the transition from weightlifting to powerlifting is much easier. The lifts are much less complex. Weightlifting is very technical. I do suggest learning them. They're fun. It's a challenge, and it's kind of an ongoing challenge, as powerlifting is. You can always kind of add more kilos to the bar. But no, I wouldn't necessarily blame powerlifting why weightlifting is difficult for me.
Well, speaking of kilos, Dean from Caffeine and Kilos asks this: tips for hydration, always struggling to get enough water in daily. My feeling about that is that set a timer if it's really a problem.
Yeah.
And be sure that you have it with you or a way to get it. That's clear.
Yeah, big water bottles obviously help. I think some of these things, everybody has their own issues, and I have more issues than most. Water or drinking isn't one for me because I'm like an oral fixation. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it is. Totally.
Like I always am drinking something or chewing gum.
Yeah.
It's just part of my ADD stuff. I always have a coffee, I always have a water, I always have a Diet Coke. I always have something. So getting liquids in isn't that hard for me. And then the other thing I would say is just every time you eat, just do a huge cup of water. That's kind of an easy go-to. All right, I'm going to snack on this, or it's my meal. Yeah. Just chug a big old thing of water. And then big water bottles. I know I have a lot of friends that just travel with some kind of water bottle, and that kind of serves them.
And we talked about adding salt to water in one of their episodes, and that's a totally legit thing to do. It helps you hold on to some of the water so you're not just peeing it straight out. But thank you for that question, Dean, because we love Dean. He's awesome. Jim, do you still lift? Yes, I do, but it's really boring and terrible, and I've been struggling with shoulder and neck bullshit for so long now that I can't really squat. I don't really bench press. I got to work around all this kind of stuff. It's boring.
Yeah, but that's just how it goes. I banged up my knee over the last month or so weightlifting, and you're just constantly adjusting. And whether you're all in on one sport, weightlifting, strongman, powerlifting, bodybuilding, you're constantly, the more advanced you get, it's more about tweaking things so you can have longevity.
Right.
So that's always going to be part of the game. Young, old, medium. I mean, basketball is the same. Everything is just a constant tweak for you to have a long success.
I take, this is that random Scotsman, I take magnesium supplements. I've heard megadosing it basically a gram plus testosterone. Or would you just shit yourself to death? The answer, I think, is that you would shit yourself to death, but I don't have an answer for this question.
I don't see a need.
I
would talk to a doctor if.
Yeah, I don't think that that's really the trick. I think that some people have magnesium deficiencies.
Yeah.
And you want to bring those up because there are a lot of systems that in the body dependent on magnesium, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, for my old sports nutrition stuff and stuff I did take in school, there's no such thing as your vitamins and your vegetables and fruits for the days, supplements or otherwise, don't roll over. You can't have Sunday day. It's kind of like your hydration and sleep. You can't go Sunday and eat a bunch of broccoli and then I don't need any more vitamins the rest of the week. And same with what's enough to be fully functioning in those vitamin deficiencies. You want to just have enough every single day. Having extra doesn't help. You're probably just going to pee it out or not utilize it. So, the simplest way with everything is, I guess, if you really want to, a multivitamin. But otherwise, just get 2 to 3 servings of fruits and veggies a day. It's really not that difficult if you get into a habit of it.
Would you still work out your upper body if one arm was in a sling due to shoulder surgery? To the extent that you can, yeah.
Yeah. I would always seek professional help, but there is some studies that may show that preserving the muscle in your left arm may help the recovery or preserve some of the muscle in your other arm or other body parts while you're under rehab. But if you have a real injury, which is much different from being hurt, probably if you're in a sling, hopefully you went to a doctor or something to get that sling, I would seek professional help from that doctor or personal physical therapist, and they'll help you out.
How do you convey and explain, this is the juicy one of the juicy ones I was looking at. How do you convey / explain your fitness and nutrition goals to a significant other who doesn't share the same ones without coming off like you're passing judgment on them?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it depends, obviously, at the depth level and how far you are into the relationship. I'd imagine if you said significant other, that maybe they're married or a long time. But even in beginning, I think it could be hard. I'm not much of a dater, but if it means something to you, you'd obviously hope that your partner is supportive of anything that is, as long as it's not detrimental to you or the relationship. So, I'm not saying ditch this partner, but if they can't understand simple things like, hey, I like to work out an hour a day, it helps me physically and mentally, then that might not be the right person to be with. It seems black and white to me, but maybe I'm too deep in it, and maybe I surround myself, obviously, with people that already understand it. But there's extremes to it. Someone who's dedicated their entire life to lifting, going to an extreme level, being able to support that lifestyle are things that I've dealt with, and that is different than just a casual lifter. Like if they can't understand you trying to get in for an hour, that's pretty bad in my opinion. It's different than you wanting to be Mr. Olympia. If you're trying to go to your significant other and say, hey, I'm trying to go be Mr. Olympia, that seems like a more, not reasonable, but that seems like a more in-depth conversation that has happened. Mm-hmm. Like, yo, I'm trying not to work and I'm trying to dedicate 110% of myself to this. That's an in-depth conversation that you have to have with your significant other, in my opinion. And just trying to be healthy shouldn't be a hurdle.
Yeah, I think that maybe the first question is to yourself. Am I doing this because I'm trying to get healthy, or I have particular goals, or is this an obsession that's just going to drive everything and potentially drive people away? I think that the more obsessed you are, the more off-putting you can be.
For sure. And I think it depends on how you handle yourself, because there's fitness folks that aren't even going to the Olympics or Olympia or even high-level powerlifting or competitive, that then turn their lifestyle and start to judge others. That's a big off-put. If you're looking at your significant other and she's eating a brownie and you're giving her a look or say something, you can't do that either. And I find that's more common than you wanting to go for the gym for an hour.
Yeah, I think that to a certain extent you just have to keep it within yourself.
For sure.
If it means that you're preparing your own food for a lot of meals, then do that. But if somebody makes a special meal for you, eat the fucking thing.
Yeah, or I think it depends again on the relationship. But that means you're the cook then. You know what I mean? If I need to have special needs, I'm going to cook for you then. Yeah. And if I'm doing this dish for me, I'm going to do that dish with you with a little more cheese or something of that nature, rather than like Jim said, then you can't expect them to cook their meal and your meal. You can't be the bitch in this situation.
Right.
You have to go a little bit beyond with some of those things. And that's the same with the judgmental, because it is weird world, because I get judged, and Jim's probably been through it. A lot of my fitness friends have been through it, where the outside world's judging us. Mike doesn't eat ice cream, or Mike doesn't. No, fuck you. I love ice cream. Or I can't even put it into words. They judge you by how you eat. Mm-hmm. I eat the same thing a lot. I'll eat a steak and a veggie, and oh, you ate that 5 times. Yeah, one, it's healthy, and 2, I like it. Fuck you. You get reverse judged for being healthy. But you can't be. You got to make sure in that case that you're not the one putting the judgment on these other people drinking or whatever lifestyle they choose.
Right. And the other thing too, I think, is that you can't let the time that you spend in the gym or with your fitness friends or working out, whatever, look like it's an escape from the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you have to have those conversations straight up, and you have to maybe negotiate times. Okay, well, what are the things that you want to accomplish? What are the things that we want to do together? And then we'll be sure that we get those things scheduled, and then I'll work around the rest of it as much as I possibly can. I don't know. You have to be open about it. You have to talk about it.
I'm not saying these aren't conversations. I'm just saying that they should be easy ones. If it's just you trying to be healthy,
right? If you're just trying to be healthy,
it should be an easy conversation.
Yeah, and I mean the best go-to maybe in those kind of arguments is look around at your family. If your family has significant issues because of weight, or just terrible fitness or whatever, then you're like, look, I want to be different than that.
Yeah.
So
and hopefully it rubs off on him, and you guys can do some of that together. But I guess it just depends on how deep into this relationship. Because I could see it kind of being a weird thing in the very beginning, first couple dates, and this person was wondering where you're always at the gym and eating weird. But if you're already deep into the relationship, if you guys have a true caring for each other, you should have true support, and both want each other to be healthy and happy.
What are your best tips for an intermediate/advanced lifter? You got to get creative.
That's very general, my friend.
Yeah, there is an episode. I can't remember which guest it was that talked about the transition from being a newbie to. I think it may have been all the way back at Galpin.
Maybe.
Where you reach the point where not everything works. Like at the beginning, everything works.
Yeah.
And then there comes a point where things slow down and you have to start getting your head more in the game and trying different things and not being able to work out the same way every day. And
new tools. Obviously, the goal is more frequency, more volume, but you got to find what you can handle. Depending on, it all just depends on the goal, right? If you're bodybuilding or powerlifting or weightlifting, there's going to be different tools that you're going to have to utilize. But continue to seek knowledge, continue to seek people better than you, stronger than you, and that's the way to get through. And don't be afraid to try new things. I'm not saying go and do some Basu ball backflips, but some people really get stuck in their ways and they hold on to a cult of type of training. Oh, I'm Bulgarian. Oh, I'm West Side. Oh, I'm this. Rather than just kind of utilize everything you can to get better. And taking 4 to 8 weeks and trying something new will not ruin the last 5 years you've put in.
Right.
You can easily hop right back to wherever you were if it doesn't work.
There was a question that I lost in here about the different methodologies and how well they work for different times. And I think that's maybe something you have to figure out by yourself. I don't think you can know that until you actually give it a try. And don't think about, I'm going to waste my time doing this thing or waste my time doing that thing. It's like, no, any time that you spend in the gym that you're working is not wasted time.
Yeah.
Top 3 tips to start a small business.
I saw that. That's hard.
It is hard. Define your market, define your offering, and be realistic about how much time you can devote to it.
Yeah. I think
maybe that's
if you're trying to start a real business, you're gonna have to get in, and you have to be in deep. You can't go in 20%. I think exactly what Jim said. You gotta have to at least have an idea. I don't think you have to write down in cement because things will change, but you have an idea of what you're doing and who you're doing it for. You can't just throw things against a wall and pray, but things will evolve as the company evolves. Maybe you hit a new demographic that you didn't think you would. Maybe you find a new product and you think it'll serve somebody else better, and you start marketing it over there. But I think general direction, and why you're doing anything is like number one answer for everything we start.
And I think that if you're starting a business with somebody else, you need to be able to be, upfront and honest about like what the roles are going to be, how things are going to be divided up work-wise and profit-wise and all that stuff, and get things in writing to the extent that you possibly can. Sometimes it doesn't seem worth it because it's not going to be enough at first, but like at least have the conversations and maybe, write an email about how things should work.
Yeah, talking about the last conversation about communication, just being open. There's going to be some not fun conversations happening with everything you do in life that you're going to take seriously. And so a business does end up being a real relationship with either your employees or your co-founders or whatever it might be. So kind of get into those conversations and get them out of the way, keep a level head, and then constantly try to look at yourself and why you're doing it. I think will really continue to drive you.
There's one more other than Jacob asking why you're so handsome. So
my mom. Thanks, Jacob.
How do you know, this is it, how do you know when it's time to try something new and move on from a sport, job, city, stage in your life, etc.? This is a good place to...
This is very relevant.
Good place to wrap it up.
I got a couple friends going through this, a couple close friends going through this. And for me, and it sometimes seems so simple, we've been through this. Everyone goes through this. Everyone goes through chapters in their life, and how you deal with them or how long the bad part of the chapter happens is kind of on you. Some people, I think, sit their whole life at this corporate job that they despise going to every morning, And sadly, they don't move on and they don't take the hints. Me, I don't know if it's my parents or my schooling or what, my mentors, but me, I am my anxiety and hate of conflict. I end up maybe closing things too quick sometimes, but I will like find a new thing, like I just can't handle not being happy. So as soon as that scale starts to tip and I'm 45% happy and 55 not so happy with what's going on or the situation, I'm probably out.
Looking to change.
That I'm probably out. And this goes for like the question said, like city, job, sport, hobby, relationship, whatever it might be. As soon as those things tip, and it's hard because who you're working for, the city you're in, the relationship, who you're dating, your hobby even, or your connection to that hobby, they may all take it personal, but it's not always personal, right? Because it's all about you. It's what you feel. If one day this podcast tips, I'll just have to tell Jim, like, yeah, man, I'm not in this anymore. And it's not because I don't like talking to Jim anymore. It's that I don't have the 55% happy to talk to this microphone anymore or on these topics. And that's just what it is. And so for me, I haven't always. 4 years ago, I decided to always chase my guts, always go with my feeling, and always do what I think is going to make me happiest. And what's given me confidence to do that is knowing that I can always U-turn. And I don't necessarily believe in fate or destiny, but I believe that like I can always keep U-turning or 180 until I can find that. So again, the hypothetical, hey, Jim, can't do this anymore. 6 months down the road, I'm like, fuck, I was happy doing that. I just text Jim again, like, yo, man, missed that. Like, want to start another show or want to pick it up? And maybe Jim says no, maybe he says yes. If he says no, then I just got to start my own show or whatever it might be. And these are all hypothetical nerds. But you know what I mean? Like, and that's how I feel with the city too. Like, it's hard because some of these decisions feel so big when you're in it. Yeah. It feels like this storm around you, a relationship, especially if anyone deals with anxiety or overthinking out there. Like, I feel like some people can make a decision and not care. But some people, especially sensitive people, this really consumes your life until you make these decisions. For me, even like I kind of stopped powerlifting. Like I've been weightlifting and kind of bodybuilding. Like, who cares? Like 2 months from now, I could easily be like, fuck it, I'm gonna squat bench dead again. Like I missed nothing. Maybe I missed a little bit of gains, like 1% of gains in those lifts. But in the scheme of things, I really missed nothing. Or if I decide to move to Los Angeles, probably lose some money, lose a little bit of time, but I gained that experience and knowing that I don't want to live in LA, and I move right back. Like, And there's bigger things. I've had friends move to China. I've had friends, switch hobbies, switch sports, obviously switch careers. But I think that's just part of life, and there's no one to answer to but yourself, really. And so you got to do what's best for you, as long as you're not hurting other people. You got to do what's best for that tiny circle or those that you really, really love. And for me, the confidence is there. It's kind of black and white to me, although it's obviously easier said than done. Yeah,
some of it comes down to having the confidence to be able to walk away from something and feeling like that it's not going to be the end of the world. And some of it depends on how much you put into building whatever it was that you might be walking away from. Yeah. Which I've definitely experienced. And how much anxiety you have about the situation, about things that are outside of your control, or figuring out how to bring into control things that feel like they're outside of your control by drawing boundaries and all those things. And if they don't work out for you, then you have to move on. Yeah. Then you got to be ready to go to get out. I've found that in the course of my career, especially early career, like every time I went on vacation, I was pretty sure I wanted to quit my job by the time I got back, because like it gives you perspective on all the stuff that you dealt with. Yeah. And so I would always go back and like, well, how can I fix this? How can I change this? What else can I get? What other position can I look at in this organization, or what kind of other responsibility I can take on that's going to help me find a different job within the organization or outside or whatever. Because it's hard to be happy. It's hard to maintain that level of happiness, over time.
Yeah, I think you have to put in effort. Like even Jim said, he was thinking about how to fix it or thinking about what's next. Yeah. You have to make a conscious effort, dedicate time, whether that's meditation, exercise, even just sitting, whatever. You have to dedicate brain power and your time to, it's the same as being self-aware. Like there's no magic to it. You have to dedicate time and tell yourself, I want to figure this out. I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to be happier. I want more money. I want whatever it is. And then you have to, some people write it down. Some people write a journal. I'm just collect billions of thoughts in my head, whatever works for you. And then number one is you have to be active. You have to
Right.
do something about it.
Right.
So whether that is switch cities, find what city fits you, find what promotion might fit you, and then if you can't find an answer, I mean, for me, I just delete chapters. Like, well, chapter closed, time to move.
Yeah.
And everybody sets different. Some people kind of sway in between for a while or whatever, but I don't work that way. I have to kind of, all right, that was a good chapter. I have to start anew, and I just go get new pages.
And sometimes you're stuck. Sometimes you're just stuck for a while. There's
Yeah,
just there's pretty much nothing you can do. I have just an instance in my life when I was working in the HMO industry where going through a merger, I was offered a job in the new organization, not the job that I was looking to get. Like somebody came in from the outside on top of me, and part of the deal was they wanted me to move to LA, and I'm like, well, here's the deal. My father-in-law at the time had cancer and was like not doing well, and like I can't move my family for 6-7 hours away. I just can't do that.
Yeah.
It's too disruptive right now. So I'm going to try to make a bargain with this and say, look, I can't right now. Let's talk about it. Like, if you're open to it, let's talk about it in 12 months.
Yeah. And only you can make that decision.
Yeah.
If someone else thinks they can and wants to fly down there Monday through Friday and stay at home with their family or father-in-law on the weekend, maybe,
I was already doing that at that point.
Yeah.
That was the
You know
problem.
what I mean? Like, but sadly, like at the end of the day, it's your life, and you kind of have to figure out all that on your own. Like, we can't give you answers. No one can give you answers until you dedicate that time to figure out what will actually make you happy, and then start acting on that.
What I would say, however, is like Mike said, do have some idea about what you want to do next, and figure out like how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
Don't just walk out.
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm not impulsive. That I'm overthinking. So by the time I already got there, I've already thought like, okay, if I make this decision, these are the 1,000 variables. That's better than these 1,000 variables I'm in right now. If you're impulsive, I don't really have an answer for you because I've never been that way. And I guess if you're impulsive, you'll just be impulsive again and find your way out of there. But I think you have to really analyze the situation and think realistically. Like, all right, say we hate living in Sacramento. It's so expensive, and this podcast, we'd make so much money living in a different state, and then we just move somewhere. But then we don't you don't analyze the things you love here. My mom's here, your family's here.
Yeah.
You don't analyze, well, the houses are more expensive here, but I love my house. House is cheap there, but it's gross. Like, you have to really think of every little thing. The grocery stores, where you're going to walk your dog, what hobby you're going to have, what gym we're going to, or whatever it might be. I think you have to really try to dig in and think of all aspects, because sometimes maybe it's not as bad as you think, and maybe it's just one thorn. And like Jim said, maybe you look for a different job or promotion within what you're doing, because everything else is good, rather than, obviously, sometimes just the negative will stick out to you, but there's maybe more good than bad.
Absolutely. I think we should call the game right there.
Ladies and gentlemen, follow me, Solid Mike, 2Ks, Twitter, Instagram. Follow the show, 50% Facts. Give us a rating and freaking review. It helps a lot. Tell your friends, and we'll catch you every Wednesday.
I am at the Jim McD on all the social media. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. 50% Facts, where percent is a word. We'll talk to you next time.